And while I've got you, we are 3 minutes out from an on-time start of the next event.
This is Artemis Mission Control in Houston, Texas. You can see a live look of the Artemis II crew inside the Orion spacecraft cabin as they prepare for another public affairs downlink event. There on your screen is CSA astronaut Jeremy Hansen along with NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman and NASA astronaut Victor Glover popping up. Earlier today, the crew completed their lunar flyby observation period, during which the Orion spacecraft and its crew passed approximately 4,000 to 6,000 miles from the moon and provided the astronauts with a full disk view of the lunar surface. And from that higher vantage point, the astronauts were able to observe both poles and large-scale geological features in a single view. Towards the tail end of that observation period, they also were able to see an eclipse. And that eclipse period lasted about an hour and was when the sun was hidden from view behind the opposite side of the moon from the perspective of Orion. Since then, the crew has been working to clean up some of their observations and transfer some of the data and imagery down to the ground to begin processing, and the science team will take a look at that imagery as it comes down ahead of a post-lunar flyby conference tomorrow with the crew following their sleep period. Now we are standing by for a second public affairs event taking place in about a minute.
Integrity, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, Integrity is ready for the event.
Administrator Isaacman, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call Integrity for a voice check.
Integrity, Jared Isaacman, comm check.
Administrator Isaacman, we've got you loud and clear up here.
I've got you loud and clear, and let's see if we can top that last PO event. That was pretty special. So we are going to spend the next 20 minutes doing Q&A from a number of questions that have been submitted, and we are going to start with one from me. You all have spent years preparing for this moment and imagining what it must be like when you look down at the moon, at the lunar surface. What has surprised you all that you did not anticipate?
Go ahead. Oh.
It's on.
Administrator, great to chat with you. Just something that just shocked me because really using imagery and just the three-dimensionality of it, you know from your experience of seeing the Earth from space, how it just seems different. And you look out in depth of things, and when we were on the far side of the moon looking back at Earth, it was just so obvious you had this sphere out in front of you of the moon and this three-dimensional. You really felt like you weren't in a capsule. You'd been transported to the far side of the moon, and it really just bent your mind. It was an extraordinary human experience. I'm so grateful for it.
Integrity, Jared, anyone else want to answer that one?
You know, we had an amazing launch. The SLS is quite a powerful rocket, and got us into a 1,200 by, eventually a 100-mile orbit, and clearly power and speed, and then we did our translunar injection, and we were going quite fast. And so with all of that speed, though, it still took us days to get here. And so the scope of all of the things to a 321-foot tall rocket was amazing. It just puts the power required to do this in perspective. But then even with all that power and to get to those velocities, it still took us days. And the breadth of the distance we had to cover. Watching the distance from Earth count up and the distance from the moon count down was one of the most surprising things I've enjoyed.
Well, as I was trying to formulate an answer, at first I couldn't think of anything because there are so many things to choose from. I'll try to just narrow it down, but I'm going to go with something we did yesterday, a manual flight test objective, where we just basically got to sit at the vehicle. It was Jeremy and I this time, and just drive around using the rotational hand controller, basically just drive it with the stick, and how well it handled, how tight the control algorithms were, and watching it respond when we actually degraded it on purpose by going into 3 degrees of freedom control, by actually inhibiting some of the jets, which even though we have jet redundancy, of course, for each other in these complicated algorithms. So it was just amazing to be in a deep space spacecraft and just be flying it around by hand. The one other thing I'll say, how fast it has gone by. I'm not ready to go home. I can't believe that something this cramped of quarters can fly by and still be fun every single minute.
And I'll just close out with, I think just scale, Jared, is the thing that is just blowing my mind. You flew Polaris Dawn to some amazing apogee numbers, and on the International Space Station, we're 250 nautical miles up, and that's the most beautiful view I think a human could ever experience. And we are dealing with numbers that are 250,000 miles, and every time Mission Control points this vehicle either at the moon or at Earth, and it reminds me every day that humans have to go, we've got to explore, we got to go further to expand our knowledge, expand our horizons. And every time we take another step forward, it makes the world seem a little bit smaller and a little bit more manageable. And just putting these numbers in perspective, it is impossible as a human to look at these displays and comprehend them. But here we are, and NASA is doing this, an international team is doing this, and they're doing it very well.
Excellent words, integrity. So certainly a very wild insertion orbit. I can imagine the contrast between perigee and apogee, the scale of it all, the 3D, seeing the moon come alive, and then certainly manual control. Well, every Dragon crew for the last 5 years is very jealous on that. Okay, so we're going to questions here. This one, the Artemis II crew, inspire all of us, but what inspires you?
I think as you get older, your answer to that question changes a lot. Certainly when I was a young boy and a young man, just seeing an airplane flying overhead, to me, that really lit a fire in me. And then I think when you reach your middle age, it is interesting to watch leadership throughout the world kind of change the course of human. You can watch that unfold. And now that I'm just a little bit over 50, you'll be there soon. Now that I'm just a little bit over 50, I mean, it all ties back to just family, and you understand just how much the people that you surround yourself with, and that is really every night when you go to bed, that's really what you end up thinking. At least that's what I end up thinking.
Thank you. All right, so here's a question. It's a good one. So for the Artemis III crew, what is the advice you would pass along for the next astronauts that will go in Orion?
That's a great question, Jared. We've actually been thinking about the Artemis III crew since we were assigned as the Artemis II crew. It was the beginning of how we came up with how we wanted to fly this mission, how we wanted to buy down risk for the program, and values as a crew. And so, you know, over the course of these 3 years, we've taken a lot of notes. So we've almost got a book to hand them. But I think a few practical things, you know, just sitting here, we've been living for the past 6 days. How you pack is a huge impact to how you will live on the journey. And so things like food and your hygiene products, and then, you know, you know what's going on with our waste management system, the technology that we have, practicing that and being familiar with that and being prepared mentally. I used it on the space station. I used it at home in training, but I'll be honest, I wasn't really prepared to have to use it for over half the mission. And but you know, we adapt and overcome, and so I can't wait to talk to that crew.
I'm glad you said it, or else I was. We definitely have to fix some of the plumbing. Okay, this question is from Merriam-Webster. So wordy one here. So you are going to be, well, you've already surpassed more than 250,000 miles from Earth, farther than any human has gone before. So what are some words that come to mind when you try to wrap your mind around this very unique experience?
I'll be honest with you, the main word, because superlatives just don't do it justice, is humility. We would never be here if it weren't for so many people that came before us, starting with Neil Armstrong, Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, civil rights movement leaders. Everyone who worked on this spacecraft. Before we got here in our 3 years of training, we went all over the country and even to our European and Canadian partners to see the people who have put their hands on this hardware, the millions of parts from every valve, to this entire thing, the people that put on harnesses every day to rig it up in the VAB. They all passed the record. We definitely didn't pass the record up here alone.
So this is actually very similar to the question the President of the United States asked just a brief bit ago. But during the quiet moments on your journey, when you were out of contact with everyone here on Earth, what were some of the thoughts that tended to occupy your mind most?
Yeah, as Victor said earlier, when we were on the far side of the moon and out of contact with planet Earth, we all knew it, and it was a milestone. We saw Earth disappear, the Earth set. But we were so busy with the science, and we have such faith in our vehicle integrity, such faith in mission control, that we were just at complete peace and just doing our job. And just trying to do a good job to collect as much science data as we could while we were on the far side of the moon. And we were just giddy in here, like of our lives.
He's being a bit humble, but as soon as we went out of comm with planet Earth, we did have maple cookies as we just gathered together for about 30 seconds. Each one of us had a maple cream cookie and then right back into the science. But we had to take a moment to honor that time going behind Earth. And it was going behind the moon and out of touch with Earth. And that was a very surreal moment for this crew.
Copy that. Good maple cookies on the far side. And how has this journey changed? How has this journey already changed the way you see our home planet and humanity's future among the stars?
There's so many directions I think we could go with that. And I just, I think that there's, global, but I think real impact is local. And is to see the Earth as an entire thing and look at it, this system, and to see it all in once. But my daughters and just the things that we can impact directly, the people that I can touch, that I can speak to, hug, and show love and gratitude toward, is the thing that I think is going to change and last. And but you also talked about the future that we're going to have in the stars, and this mission, I think we swung for the fence and launched on our first try after learning a lot earlier this year. But I think it set the stage for us to go out and continue to swing for the fence hard in our Orion SLS and ground systems programs to go and get the next one teed up so that crew can knock it off out of the park. And so I have huge expectations for what's coming next.
Good words. Are you feeling homesick for Earth?
I will tell you, last of my eyes, I did start thinking about getting home. It's not homesickness at all, but the first time probably in 3 years, I let my mind get past the moon and back towards home. And I had to catch myself right there. You're an operator just like we are, and you know that is the place to be when you're up here. We got to look one step ahead. What's next? What's our next burn? How are we setting up our trajectory to get home? And we are going to do that. We are locked in, and we are definitely excited for the second half of this mission. And we are on guard. We are first crew to fly this vehicle. We are ready for any contingency in any scenario, and we are going to stay locked in every second until we are back on that Navy ship and then home reunited with our families.
And copy that. Astronauts like being in space. That checks out. Okay, there's a lot of questions from the space photography community. How are the pictures going so far?
Well, we all love getting our hands on cameras and our eyes behind the lens here, because we're just trying to share the incredible things that we're seeing, and that's obviously the best way we can try to do that. I've been into night sky photography for a long time, and so this is really a dream come true for me. I have thought specifically to that community, the time lapses I've been trying to get, those are a little tougher because we have a very dynamic vehicle. It's not like being on ISS where you can get the city lights below and the auroras and the spinning stars around the North Star. There's a lot going on. So, but what we got to matter is out of this world. When we viewed that eclipse, that was the one time we all said, we literally cannot capture this with a camera. Everything else, I think we've really put our hearts and minds into making sure we understand so that we can bring that home to everyone. But having to set the low light features for Earthshine on the moon while it's an eclipse, that was a new one. I had to dig deep in my book for that one.
And thanks for the iPhones. They've been working great.
Very glad to hear that. And there are a couple billion people back here on Earth that are extremely excited to look at the imagery you've captured up there. So. Okay, well, I want to thank you all. Integrity. So Reed, Victor, Christina, Jeremy, on behalf of NASA and space-loving people across the world, thank you for taking us with you to the moon. Thank you for your courage, all of your beautiful words that we've heard. You represent the absolute best of us. We are proud of you, and we look forward to welcoming you back safely to the good Earth very soon. Godspeed, and go Artemis II.
Thank you so much, Administrator. We are just proud to be a part of this team, doing our work every day, and we are supported by a huge world of humans, and we are just honored to be a part of that. Thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Integrity, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event. Thank you.
Thank you to all participants. Integrity, we are now resuming operational audio comm.
This is Mission Control Houston inside the Artemis Flight Control Room as the lunar flyby coverage is coming to a close. You can see a final look there of the Orion spacecraft and that crescent moon in the distance. The Artemis II crew inside the Orion spacecraft named Integrity lifted off atop the Space Launch System rocket on Wednesday, April 1st from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This crew is the first to live and work inside the Orion spacecraft. And about 25 hours after launch, Orion conducted its TLI, or translunar injection burn, which committed Orion to departing high Earth orbit and set us up for today's flyby. TLI also served as the spacecraft's deorbit burn as it slingshot Orion around the moon and set the crew on its free return trajectory with that splashdown slated for Friday, April 10th. Last night, on flight day 5, the crew entered the lunar sphere of influence, the point at which the pull of the moon's gravity became stronger than the pull of Earth's gravity, and the crew will remain in this lunar sphere of influence until about 12:25 p.m. Central, 1:25 p.m. Eastern on April 7th. Today, the crew spent the majority of their day making science observations and capturing imagery as part of the lunar flyby, during which Orion and its crew passed approximately 4,000 to 6,000 miles from the moon and provided the crew with a full disk view of the lunar surface. From that higher vantage point, the crew was able to observe both poles and large-scale geologic features in a single view, and the Artemis II crew also became the first humans to directly observe certain far-side regions of the moon with unaided eyes. During the lunar flyby, the crew also surpassed the Apollo 13 distance record and made that farthest distance from the Earth during their mission at a distance of 252,756 miles away from Earth.
Integrity Houston with 2 updates.
Houston, go ahead with the updates.
Hey, Victor, again, awesome job on both of those events. The team down here really enjoyed following along. I've got 2 sync items for you. The first is that based on ground schedules, we'd like to pull your flight director conference up before your PMC. So we'll start the flight director conference at the time the PMC is currently scheduled.
Sounds good.
And the second item is just following up on the DU-1 caution. We believe this is a recurrence of what we saw with DU-2 earlier in the mission. It's back up, and it's ready for you to reconfigure displays as you wish. And I see you have that in work.
Okay, great. We would love a main and secondary dump line status, really the main line.
Check in. And Reed, back with you on the dump lines. The main dump is open, and it's proceeding very slowly, but the secondary is still configured and go for use.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
And this is Artemis Mission Control. Some communication there between NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman and the Capcom, or capsule communicator, here in Mission Control, discussing some of the final activities on their timeline for the day before they head into pre-sleep and get ready to close out flight day 6. So during the flyby period, the Artemis crew and in its Orion spacecraft reached a farthest distance from Earth at 252,756 miles, which was 4,112 miles farther than Apollo 13. And a couple minutes prior to that farthest distance milestone, Orion also made its closest approach to the moon at a distance of 4,067 miles. And at the end of the lunar flyby period, the crew was also able to see an eclipse with the sun hidden from view behind the opposite side of the moon from the perspective of Orion. And during this time, the crew saw a mostly dark moon, and the crew also used the opportunity to analyze the solar corona, which is the sun's outermost atmosphere. And once the sun was completely out of view behind the moon, the crew observed impact flashes, which are flashes of light from meteoroids striking the surface and some deep space targets, including planets such as the Mars, Venus, and Saturn. The crew's observations during this flyby, along with handheld photography and images from the Orion spacecraft, will form the basis for scientific investigations into the moon's geologic history, the lunar environment, and current processes such as new impacts. At this point in the Artemis II mission, the crew and the teams on the ground have begun or completed 23 of the 27 high-priority objectives for the mission, providing a tremendous insight into the operation of the Orion spacecraft and critical information as we prepare for future Artemis missions. Now that the lunar flyby observation period has concluded, along with the public affairs events that followed with President Donald Trump and NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, we are going to wrap our broadcast coverage on NASA Plus. Thank you to everyone who tuned into our coverage on NASA Plus, as well as through our streaming partners on Peacock, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and HBO Max. While our NASA Plus coverage is concluding, our 24/7 continuous coverage will continue on NASA's YouTube page, so you can continue to follow our Artemis II crew on their return journey back to Earth. This is Mission Control Houston.
Houston integrity, we have a science question.
We are ready to copy.
We just want to check our understanding before we go to bed, because we think we made some changes, but the procedures, were not updated as expected. We no longer have to transfer any of the audio recordings on our PCDs or any notes we made in OneNote. That you will just go into the applicable locations and pull that stuff down from where they are originally created.
That is a good recollection, Jeremy. That is correct.
Okay, so we are transferring photos into 4 science folders on all 3 PCDs. And if you go into those 4 science folders, you'll get all of the imagery that we took today. And just a heads up, just so much excitement up here. Sometimes we switch cards and sometimes we didn't. And so the different shifts are on various cards in various places, but all the photos are there.
Copy all. Thanks for the report.
This is Artemis Mission Control in Houston, Texas. We're currently 5 days, 4 hours, and 52 minutes into the Artemis II mission. You just heard some call down from the crew on board the Orion spacecraft, and you can see a live view of the exterior of that Orion spacecraft there on your screen. They are working to downlink some of the imagery that they captured throughout the lunar flyby today. And here shortly, they are also going to wrap up some of the final activities for the day, which includes a private medical conference with their medical teams here on the ground, as well as a private conference with the flight director here on the ground to go through vehicle status and any questions, comments, concerns they may have ahead of the next flight day. After those private conferences are complete, they will then enter their pre-sleep period. During this pre-sleep period, the crew 2.5 hours to decompress for the day. They can also complete any necessary personal activities and hygiene activities, and it's also when they have an opportunity to eat their dinner. The meals provided to the crew throughout the mission are from the Space Food Systems Laboratory here in Houston, Texas. That team works closely with every human spaceflight crew, both on the Artemis missions as well as missions to the International Space Station ahead of launch, to taste their food and go through their standard menus and what they will expect, as well as some training on how to use the food warmers, as well as how to rehydrate some of that food. Some of the food that the crew may be eating for dinner tonight includes chicken with corn and black beans, sweet and sour pork, rice pilaf, spicy green beans, citrus fruit salad, maple cream cookies, as well as shrimp cocktail, Turkish fish stew, Caribbean chicken, mashed potatoes, cauliflower with cheese and butter cookies.
Integrity Houston, OE2 is configured for your conference with Mr. Radigan.
This is Artemis Mission Control. You are currently seeing a live view of the Orion spacecraft. This view coming to you from one of the 4 solar array wings, or SOS. They each have cameras mounted to them that provide these live views. And in the distance, you can see a crescent Earth. That, of course, is now the destination for the Orion spacecraft and its crew, now that we are on the return journey leg of the mission following today's lunar flyby. We are targeting a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California on Friday, April 10th. That splashdown will take place in about 3 days, 20 hours, and 13 minutes. The crew is wrapping up their 6th flight day. They are currently in a privatized conference with the flight director here in Mission Control. They typically have a private conference at the end of every flight day. Following this, they will have a brief private conference with their medical teams here on the ground, and then they will head into their pre-sleep period. And that will wrap up their 6th flight day as part of the Artemis II mission. Going into the 7th flight day, they will have quite a bit of time off duty, but they will complete a post-lunar flyby conference. During this time, they will have the opportunity to discuss their lunar flyby observations with the science team on the ground. Some of that is still fresh and top of mind. And then a little bit later in the day, there is the opportunity for a RTC-1 burn. This is a return trajectory correction burn, should it be needed, and it will allow, it would be a short thruster firing to allow the Orion spacecraft to fine-tune its trajectory on the return leg. And then in the second half of the day, they will work on a radiation sheltering demonstration. During that radiation sheltered demonstration, the crew will build a radiation shelter within the cabin of the Orion spacecraft and prepare lockers for radiation shelter ingress or entering into them. On missions to the moon through the Artemis program, astronauts venture beyond Earth's protective magnetic field. The Orion spacecraft serves as the main protection against the sun's intense power. And NASA has radiation dosage level thresholds that they look for inside Orion. The first threshold signals a caution, prompting closer monitoring and coordination with medical and flight operations team. And then a higher threshold triggers a recommendation for the crew to take shelter. Radiation shielding in space is all about mass. Charged particles are slowed and absorbed as they pass through matter, so astronauts are trained to reconfigure their cabin during a solar particle event, removing stowed equipment from storage bays and securing it along areas of the cabin to add mass between themselves and incoming particles. Since Artemis II is the first crewed Artemis mission, testing this procedure in the Orion spacecraft is a major objective of the mission. This is Artemis Mission Control in Houston, Texas. We are currently 5 days, 5 hours, and 19 minutes into the Artemis II mission and counting. Currently on your screen, you can see a live view from the Orion spacecraft named Integrity by its crew. You can see a clear view of one of those solar array wings. There are 4 solar array wings, or SOAs, that provide power generation for the Orion spacecraft. And just above that solar array wing, you can see a crescent Earth. Currently, the Orion spacecraft is about 11,900 miles away from the moon, and that distance will continue to increase now that we are on the return leg of the journey. The Orion spacecraft and its crew had their lunar flyby and made their closest approach to the moon earlier today, and the distance from Earth is about 249,000 miles. We are expecting a splashdown on Friday, April 10th, on flight day 10. That splashdown in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California in about 3 days, 19 hours, and 57 minutes from now. Currently, the crew is wrapping up some of the final activities for the day, and then they are about to enter their pre-sleep period. That pre-sleep period will last about 2.5 hours, after which they will go to sleep. They typically have an 8.5-hour sleep period, and then they will begin flight day 7. The majority of flight day 7 will be an off-duty day for the crew, but they do still have a few items that they have to complete. One of those is a post-lunar flyby conference, and this will be directly with the crew and the science team here on the ground to discuss some of their lunar flyby observations as part of the data collection, to allow the crew to talk through what they experienced and what they saw while it's still top of mind and fresh following today's lunar flyby observation period. Again, that lunar flyby lasted about 7 hours, and towards the tail end of that flyby, they did get to experience an eclipse. Following that post-lunar flyby conference, the crew will have a little bit of a break. They will be able to exercise, have their midday meal, and then there is the opportunity for a return trajectory correction 1 burn should it be needed. These return trajectory correction burns allow the Orion spacecraft to fine-tune its path on the way back to Earth. On the outbound journey, there were originally 3 planned outbound trajectory correction burns. The first 2 of those burns ended up being canceled, as it was determined they were not needed due to the accuracy of the translunar injection burn, or TLI burn, which took place on flight day 2. The third and final of those outbound trajectory correction burns did take place on flight day 5. And it ended up being a 17.5-second burn to fine-tune Orion's trajectory as it made its flyby around the moon. So again, there will be an opportunity for a return trajectory correction burn tomorrow should it be needed. And then in the latter half of their flight day 7, they will complete a radiation shelter demonstration. This is Artemis Mission Control in Houston, Texas. Currently on your screen, you can see a live view of the Orion spacecraft on the left-hand side. Those views coming to you from the solar array wing cameras. The crew is currently in their pre-sleep period. During this period, they have the opportunity to eat dinner and also perform any necessary hygiene activities and other personal activities ahead of going to sleep. We do expect the crew to enter their sleep period in a little under 2 hours, about an hour and 45 minutes from now. Also in that view on the left-hand side, you can see a crescent Earth in the distance, just above that solar array wing. The right-hand side of your screen shows a visualization from the Artemis Real-Time Orbit website, or ARO. This website is available at nasa.gov/track-Artemis for the duration of the Artemis II mission and provides updates on the spacecraft's velocity as well as its distance from the Earth and the Moon as it makes its journey back home here to Earth, again with that splashdown targeted for Friday, April 10th. Following a lunar flyby observation period of about 7 hours earlier today, the crew then worked to clean up some of their observations as well as the imagery and data that they captured and collected and began downlinking that. And we do expect to have some of that imagery available here shortly. During the Artemis II lunar flyby, the crew collected 3 primary science data sets, which included images, verbal descriptions, and written annotations to be able to provide scientists with multiple layers of context for each observation. The handheld imagery was captured using Nikon cameras, including an 80 to 400 millimeter zoom lens dedicated to lunar targeting. And those images were designed to capture regional context and relationships among large geologic features rather than fine surface detail. And then the verbal descriptions were the highest priority science data set on Artemis II. The astronauts recorded real-time observations through a dedicated application on their crew tablets, which are sometimes referred to as PCDs or portable computing devices. Through those verbal descriptions, they were describing what they were seeing, how the features related spatially, and how conditions were changing as the lighting evolved. And then the crew annotations were recorded in OneNote.
We are complete with the conference on too. You can normalize that. Thank you.
In work. Thanks.
And Houston Integrity, the actigraph data is on PCD2.
We copy.
Houston Integrity on 1 for imagery for downlink folders.
Go ahead.
Okay, on PCD1, I have noticed I have 2 imagery for downlink folders, and I have been using both of them today. One is on the C drive, and one is in C users CDR desktop imagery for downlink. So when they're downlinking from PCD1, please have them check both folders, and then after, it looks like there was an alias placed on my desktop, and that has caused that confusion. So likely my fault, don't recall. But if they could please check both the C drive imagery for downlink and then my login imagery for downlink on PCD1, I would appreciate it.
We copy.
And we just heard some communication there between the crew on board the Orion spacecraft. Some of that first communication was coming from NASA astronaut Victor Glover, who was wrapping up a crew preference conference. These are private conferences, often between the crew and their family and friends on the ground. And then we heard some communication after that from NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman, who was asking some questions and letting them know about some images and data that were being downlinked from the Orion spacecraft following the lunar flyby earlier today. During the lunar flyby, in addition to the images and verbal descriptions and written annotations that the crew was collecting, the Orion spacecraft's vehicle-mounted cameras also supplemented the crew's observations by providing high-resolution still imagery and lower-resolution video before, during, and after the flyby from perspectives unavailable inside the Orion spacecraft itself. In preparation for the lunar flyby and the Artemis II mission, the Artemis II astronauts underwent extensive lunar science training, including classroom instruction, field work, and high-fidelity simulations. They had training expeditions that took place in analog environments, such as the Icelandic highlands, where crews practiced identifying and describing geologic features under varying conditions. And then Orion mock-ups were also used to rehearse crew choreography, including three-dimensional space management with an inflatable moon globe to simulate the flyby.
integrity on 1 for the overboard dump.
Go ahead.
If you could secure the overhead dump, we would like to use non-urine toilet, and then we'll call you when we're complete.
We are putting that in work for you, and I have 2 other updates for you while I got you, if you're okay with a little bit more interruption to your pre-sleep.
Send it.
All right, so just with email, we're still syncing. We did hear your comment about the priority list. Unfortunately, it turns out that there was a miscommunication on that, so we're working it. We've got a couple of solutions in mind to reduce the volume of emails that you're getting, but we probably won't get there tonight. So the uplink you're getting now is not truncated, but we are pursuing a solution to truncate those in the future.
Okay, and what's your ETA on how much longer you want us hands-off email, or we're just not going to have access tonight?
We are aiming for 20 minutes on that. Thanks for bearing with. Sorry again.
Yeah, it's no big deal. Email around the moon was not something we expected to have anyway.
Well, you guys regaled us with so much moon joy today. We were really hoping to pay you back. But we'll let you know as soon as that sync is complete. The second thing we had for you is that we are going to start doing some playback from the ACU. So on OE2 will be unavailable for about an hour while we are playing back some of your comm from earlier.
Okay, copy that. OE1 only for us for the next couple hours.
And last but not least, the overboard vent valve is closed, so you are go to go.
All right, in work.
This is Artemis Mission Control. You're currently seeing a live view of the Orion spacecraft. This view coming to you from one of the solar array wing cameras. Currently inside the Orion spacecraft, which was named Integrity by its crew, are the 4 crew members of the Artemis II mission, which includes Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Cook, and Jeremy Hansen. The crew recently completed their lunar flyby today during flight day 6. And they are currently in their pre-sleep period, preparing to go to sleep in a little over an hour to wrap up flight day 6. During the upcoming flight day 7, which will begin upon crew wake, the crew will have a relatively light duty day. They will have a post-lunar flyby conference with the teams here on the ground, specifically the science team here on the ground, to discuss some of their lunar observations that were made during the flyby period today. And then they will have a little bit of a break after that before they have their midday meal and then move into the RTC-1 burn, or the return trajectory correction 1 burn, should it be needed to further fine-tune the trajectory of the Orion spacecraft on its return leg of the journey. After that burn is complete, they will again have a couple of hours of free time, as it's going to be a mostly off-duty day for the crew tomorrow. And then in the second half of their day, they will spend a couple of hours completing a radiation shelter demonstration. And during this radiation shelter demonstration, the crew will build a radiation shelter within the cabin of the Orion spacecraft and prepare lockers for radiation shelter ingress. On missions to the moon through the Artemis program, astronauts venture beyond Earth's protective magnetic field, so the Orion spacecraft serves as the main protection against the sun's intense power. Radiation shielding in space is all about mass, so charged particles are slowed and absorbed as they pass through matter, and astronauts are trained to reconfigure their cabin during a solar particle event by removing stowed equipment from storage bays and securing it along areas of the cabin to add mass between themselves and incoming particles. Since Artemis II is the first crewed Artemis mission, testing this radiation sheltering procedure in the Orion spacecraft is one of the major objectives of the mission. During the uncrewed Artemis I mission, Orion was blanketed in 5,600 passive and 34 active radiation sensors, and the information they gathered assured researchers that Orion's design can provide protection for crew members from hazardous radiation levels during lunar mission. That doesn't mean, though, that scientists don't want more information. So similar to Artemis I, there are 6 active radiation sensors, collectively called the Hybrid Electronic Radiation Assessors, that will be deployed at various locations inside the Orion crew module. And then the crew also wears dosimeters inside their pockets, and these sensors are providing warnings of hazardous radiation levels caused by space weather events made by the sun, and if necessary, this data will be used by mission control to drive decisions for the crew to build a shelter to protect from radiation exposure due to space weather. Additionally, NASA has also partnered with the German space agency, DLR, for an updated model of their M42 sensor for the Artemis II mission. The new version of this sensor offers 6 times more resolution to distinguish between different types of energy compared to the Artemis I version, and it will allow it to accurately measure the radiation exposure from heavy ions, which are thought to be particularly hazardous for radiation risk. Artemis II is also carrying 4 of the monitors affixed at points around the cabin by the crew, and collectively the sensor data will paint a full picture of radiation exposures inside the Orion spacecraft and provide context for interpreting the results of Archer, Avatar, Artemis II standard measures, and immune biomarkers experiment. Currently on your screen, you can see a view of the Artemis Real-Time Orbit website, or ARO. This is available at nasa.gov/trackartemis and provides updates on the velocity of the Orion spacecraft along with its distance from the Earth and from the moon. So the distance from the moon is now increasing following that lunar close approach that took place earlier today. There's now just under 14,000 miles.
Integrity Houston. in with a couple more cleanup items.
Houston, go ahead.
Hey, I wanted to let you know that our email sync is completed. You can all now use your email. We also wanted to give Reed a heads up that we are merging those imagery for our downlink folders into one. So going forward, he should only see one on his PCD. Not to be alarmed if you see one disappeared. And then last, thought you guys would be happy to know we have implemented your feedback for tomorrow. So we are ensuring that everyone will have exercise. We are also going to move the RAD shelter demo to flight day 8, where it is going to be condensed to focus on the highest priority objectives.
Awesome. That's great news on all accounts. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
And we just heard some...
Thank you, Tess, and you have a good night, too.
And we just heard some communication there between NASA astronaut Victor Glover on board the Orion spacecraft and the Capcom, or capsule communicator here in Mission Control, Tess Caswell for Orbit 2. They were discussing an update that was being made to the crew's email on board the Orion spacecraft. That update now complete, and they were also discussing some of the activities that were scheduled for Flight Day 7, which is tomorrow. They did mention that they are actually going to move that radiation shelter demonstration that I was just mentioning a few moments ago. So that demonstration is now moving to Flight Day 8 to allow the crew to have a larger, more off-duty day tomorrow with less tasks on the timeline. So now for Flight Day 7, the crew will just have their post-lunar flyby conference, and then possibly that return trajectory correction 1 burn should it be needed. Otherwise, they will have a pretty light duty day tomorrow with some free time to do as they please on this return journey back to Earth. Again, that splashdown targeted for Friday, April 10th.